Uh, Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Not sure where you all might be tuning in from. For those that don't know me, my name is James Weeks. I'm the author of the book Meditations Across the King's River, African Inspired Wisdom for Life's Journey. Um, I help people with strategies for emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, financial wellness. Today, I'm honored to be joined by two powerful Caribbean sisters and healers and movers and shakers. So today, I have with me Simone Arthur, a fantastic and powerful medium with roots out of Barbados, and we have my sister, Dr. Norissa Williams of Trinidadian descent. And Dr. Norissa Williams is a psychotherapist, motivational speaker. She loves to help marginalized communities develop tools for mental and emotional wellness. So welcome today, Dr. Norissa, and welcome, Simone.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you, Baba. It's
Yes.
always a pleasure to sit with you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So for those who are listening, and I just want to give you a background of how this talk came about. And I was talking to Ia Simone, and she was telling me of an upcoming retreat that should be happening next year. Um, a retreat that centers around spiritual wellness, ancestral veneration. And then she also told me that she'll be doing a workshop, an upcoming workshop with Dr. Norissa Williams. And she thought it would be wonderful to have her as a guest on this show. So before we go into the workshop in New York around mental health and spirituality, I was wondering if each of you could just tell us briefly about your background, what led us to the path that you all are on today.
Norissa, you want to go first?
Okay. My mind is, because I'm such a storyteller. I'm like, okay, where do I want to start? So I'm not like telling too much story. So what brought me to where I am? So I'll start with who I am, right? I am a social worker, was my first degree, and then I'm also a psychologist. And I came to these healing professions, these helping professions, because it's so consistent with who I am to be able to emotionally attune to people's needs. Helping was a big part of me. I actually also started working at like 14 at a community center that served primarily Black youth because it was in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And so from there, I just followed this route. I studied abroad in Ghana when I was about 21, my last year of school. And so that really like filled out this perspective that I had. So by the time I went to grad school and started practicing, my focus was really on making things better for marginalized communities, particularly Black and Latinx folks. And so in the field, I quickly saw how, when I used to have to go to family court with the families that I was going with, how biased, how racially and culturally biased the laws were. So, for example, um, sometimes when you go to family court, if there was something happening in a family, they would mandate that the family have individual, like the parent have individual therapy or family therapy or different things like that. Otherwise, the children would get taken away. And I thought about my own family, and my mother had me as a teenager, and there were risks involved, right? But I was like, in my family, if they had to do that, they would have lost us to the system because that's not their cultural way. So I went back to school. I got my working on my doctorate because I really wanted to learn culturally embedded practices of help seeking among people of color. And so I went in that direction and I worked at a county level, Nassau County, Long Island, and I was trying to we're doing work to infuse cultural competence into systems of care. From there, I was a professor at Medgar College in Brooklyn. I went on to NYU, and increasingly there was this disconnect between the system I was in and how oppressive that system was for a Black person, for a Black woman in particular. And I did most of my work was on decolonizing and anti-racism within systems, particularly mental health systems, educational systems. And so I had this moment, right? This is where Ia Simone and I connect. Around 2019, I was at an event. My sister-in-law was selling raw food at a Christmas kind of pop-up shop, a holiday, I should say, pop-up shop kind of event. I go in, I see Simone immediately, and I see that she's doing readings, and I'm open to it and different things like that. And I see her, but I go around to everybody else, and I was like, I'll go to her last, right? And so I did go to Simone's table. And I'm sure, Simone, I'm sure you could fill in your perspective. But from my perspective, I go to her table and I do a reading. I was like, I'm just going to ask her like a quick little question or whatever. So I was like, okay, job, right? Because that felt like low risk for me in a public setting. So I was like, okay, so what do you see for my job? And so Simone said that she saw that I was going to get a promotion. I was like, okay, well, she's on the right track. I am, for the next year, I was going to be promoted. I was a faculty member in the Master's in Counseling program, and I was moving to the director of that program. And so then she started to say some other things. And she said, the first thing that she said was that there would be a superior that was pushing for me. And she saw a white man. I was like, nope, it's a Black woman in my head. And so mentally I'm backing away like, okay, she don't know what she's talking about, right? Then there were a few things. And then she said that I would only stay in that position for a year. I was like, why would I go, why would I elevate and then only stay there for a year? And I'm thinking like, all right, she's cute, but like maybe she needs a little bit more work. But it played out just that way. It played out exactly that way in that, so the Black woman who was my chair at the time, all of a sudden she got this promotion to dean. So she left my department and there was a white man there. And because I was very vocal about the insidious racism within the department and the racial, there weren't overt racial dynamics, but why is the Black woman doing all the work? Can you help me out? Why is the Black woman doing all the work? And so he was responsive to the things I was saying. So I was like, okay, someone is right. But then it was also, this was 2020. 2020 into 21, and it was really like stressful and crazy. And so I really began thinking, irrespective of what Simone had said, that I would only be there for a while, I began thinking like, okay, this is not the place for me. And so I did go back to Simone and it really confirmed like, okay, it is time for me to leave. And so I left there. And the thing that I was still passionate about was making sure that we had settings that were anti-racist and liberatory in nature. And so I started my own business, Liberation Research and Practice Institute, and I consult with organizations to just make the workspaces, the help-seeking spaces more liberatory. And so in doing that, and in working with Simone too, I came into a relationship more and more with my ancestors within the last 2 years. Our paths just continued. Like whenever I had like a big question, ancestrally we go for divination, right? And so whatever I had a big question, I would go back to Simone. And so in these conversations, my great grandmother, who was a mother in the spiritual Baptist tradition in Trinidad, would present herself and was basically like, get your together and develop your practice. And again, our paths would intersect when I was like, I was trying to do it on my own, and I was like, I need help. I wonder if Simone would mentor me. And then I opened Instagram and see Simone just advertising that she has this 7-week course, which I took and really started developing my relationship. I mean, I had always been intuitive, but to know how to have a relationship with my ancestors, I didn't, right? And so now, 2 years later, I have a very developed relationship with my ancestors where they're integral to my everyday life, moving from morning all through the day. And we continue to cross paths. I think we elevate together. And so Simone reached out a couple months ago about doing this event. So we have an event on December 9th, and it is bridging the gap between mental health practice and spirituality. And it is really an event for helping professionals, particularly those in mental health, but it's open to other helping professionals and empaths who really want guidance about how do we create these energetic boundaries? How do we not take home the work with us? How do we do this work without it fully depleting us? Because most people in these professions really, really care. And so that's my version of events. And Simone, I would love to give you the opportunity to share who you are and fill in the blanks.
To hear you speak, Norissa, and to sit in this space at this time and this hour, I can feel the energy of the mothers in the space, in the room. And when you speak about your work and your desire, and technically you're speaking about your destiny. We always talk about, and Babylon Weeks will know this, our destiny. We talk about 95, our destiny. And when I hear you speak, I hear that Maya Angelou poem, And Still I Rise. And I also hear the poem, Phenomenal Woman. And there's a piece in the poem that talks about the hope and the dream of the slave. And Norissa, you are that. You are that. When I was listening to you, and I feel like these women come around, especially the women that walk with you. And they're like, you know, when as a grandmother, your grandchild is doing something so proud and you're standing, your back is up straight and your shoulder. That's my grandchild, especially if they're walking across a graduation stage or they're doing a recital or something. And I remember that energy when I was doing the recital at the Harvest for church. When I was going to church, here in Barbados with my grandmother. And she was sitting in the audience so proud and just be mouthing the words. And reminded me with her hand action what I was supposed to do. And I feel that for you when you speak about the work. Because that is what it is. The work. I could talk about me. We'll get to that at some point. But we are sitting here with Baba Weeks. I am here. You are here. This is part of the work. And getting the information out to people, especially people of color, that they need to go back within themselves and to go back to their ancestors and have a seat, sit down somewhere, to understand where you are, to understand where you came from, and to know where you're going. And if we as people of color understood that, do you understand how powerful we would be? We sit in a space now where we're looking at a war, and I'm not going to get political, between two factions, right? And then one faction is saying, you know what? Enough is enough. And this is the first time. This war has been ongoing for years. We may not hear about it in the news at one point, but that doesn't mean it has stopped. But at this time in 2023, it's a little different. Where the supposedly underdog is having a serious backing of the world in a different way this time. It feels different this time. And it is because people of color are becoming more aware of who they are. This is the work, people. When she could tell you as a teenager, she felt the need to go into the community and service the community. That came from somewhere. That means that somebody from behind was doing this work from before.
Yeah.
And it just moves through in her DNA and it gets to her. And she understood the assignment from in the womb. Talk to me, man. She understood the assignment from in the womb. And she's doing the work. Now, she has her doctorate. I have my title as Iya at being initiated. But even outside of that, even before that, we were doing the work. Because we understood, as the young people are telling us now, we understood the assignment. So I go back to that, and we talk about the role of women. We talk about the role of Black women, especially. All that gets to me. Just before we came on live, I talked to you about, I was seeing these cows out on my mother's pasture, they come and graze on here. They have nothing to do with us. We don't even own the cows. The cows belong to the community, and they come on here and they do as they like. They eat the best. And every minute when you turn around, someone else is with child, and then we get a new calf that comes up. And that's the rebirth. That's the beginning, right? And we're just continuing that with this conversation. I do a retreat called Sacred Conversations with Our Ancestors. It's held in the land of my birth, Barbados. And we do it in May. We did one in October last year. That was spirit. That was spirit. That was spirit. Because I don't know, nobody want to do 2 retreats in 1 year. The spirit showed up in the middle of the night. I've been trying to negotiate for years for spirit to have conference calls, meetings with me, like regular folks too, 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe at midday during lunch. But no, we have to talk 2, 3, 4 o'clock, what they call the witching hour. Because it is said no one else is listening and they have our undivided attention, right? So anyhow, this retreat comes around. Spirit wakes me up in the middle of the night. We want you to do a retreat. I said, I don't know nothing about doing no retreat. I don't know nothing about planning a retreat. I barely wet behind the ears from getting initiated in Nigeria. What retreat you talking about? Are you done, Simone? This is what we're going to do. And from the date to the name, to the vendors, to who I'm supposed to work with, to what it's supposed to look like. Participants must arrive in white. They must leave in white throughout the retreat. They must be in white. And they talked about rituals. The rituals we're going to do. One of the rituals is that we cleanse you. We cleanse you with water and herbs. We cleanse you with smoke. We anoint you with oil. And spirit talks to you during that time. Then we sit down, we have a conversation about your mental health and how that is connected to your spirituality. And there's a lot of downtime in this retreat because we don't go bar hopping. We don't have no fancy dances. We ain't got no DJ coming on. We ain't got none of that. You are in a space where the resort faces the Atlantic Ocean, right? And on the Atlantic, where it's located on the east coast of the island. And that is where the Atlantic Ocean is for Barbados. And between Barbados, you can sail from that spot to Africa without touching or seeing landmass. So understand the energy that you are sitting and facing, because that is where our ancestors are buried. So when you come to do the work. We ain't coming to, and no disrespect to any retreat that has these things. I'm all good for a nice cocktail. I love my sundowner. But in this space, you got to face you and you got to talk to your ancestors. When we have the bush bath, before you have it, you have to pick your own herbs. Let spirit talk to you and tell you what herbs are for your bath. I don't pick the herbs. You pick them. I just lay all of them out on the table. I mark them. And you intuitively go to the table and you pick your herbs. Because that is what spirit wants you to pick. Then later on, we have a sit-down discussion and we ask, why does spirit want us to pick these herbs for our bath? So we look at what the herbs mean spiritually, what the intentions are. I do nothing without intentions. Intentions, our ancestors, they come, they say, well, Simone, you're going to do this, and they do it. That's it. Anybody who knows me, it is that. You call me, if I don't know, I'll refer you to somebody else. Without getting shaky these days, but I'll tell you, go and sit with your ancestors and see what they come at. Sit with it. Everything, it has an intention, and that is what we have to work with. That is what we have to use, because these are our ancestors coming back to us. We like to call it ancestral memory, and speaking to us in a way that let us know where we are, where we need to be, the places we need not to be, and where we're going to go. So this is what this retreat is about. It's for 4 days. The page is up. You go to my website, readingsbysimone.com. The page is up, readingsbysimone.com. And we take care of you. You don't have to spend any money when you get here. The fee is $3,000. There is a payment plan. You tell me what your payment plan is. There's no set plan for anybody. You know, you come to me and you say, well, Simone, this is my schedule. Can we work with this? And I'm like, sure. There you go. Because you're supposed to be here if you come into me to discuss this. And your ancestors is telling you, we want you at Sacred Conversations with our ancestors. So we're going to work it to make sure that you get here. So our fee includes, you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks. Or, you know, we have a chef prepared everything. And if you have any dietary restrictions, we take care of that as well. The chef is aware of what he can and can't do, because sometimes we also have initiated priests who have their taboo. So we take care of that. We have 2 mornings, early morning of yoga. We work with a yoga person here on the island. We have the bush baths, we have the oil anointing, and we also have the smoke cleanse. We have one down eat afternoon, where this time we're going to go on the west coast of the island, and we're going to have a picnic on the beach. There's still no alcohol. So we're going to have a picnic on the beach. We're going to have the chef there. He's going to do some grilling and serve some food. Then we go back, and on the last day, we gather all our offerings, because we also have a communal altar that is moving. We gather all our offerings, any herbs that is left, flowers, everything. Everybody gets their own bouquet, and we take a walk to the ocean. We are led by the drummers, and then followed by me ringing the bell. And the music of the drummers and me ringing the bell is to let the ancestors know we're coming. We're coming down to the ocean now. Get ready, be prepared for us, because we're coming to say our prayers and our affirmations. We're coming to do our meditations. We're coming to give thanks. We're coming to give our offerings. And we're coming to ask for help. We're coming to ask for directions. And let me tell you, some folks have left our retreat and they're doing the work. We got some people who've been initiated. We got some people doing their own ancestral veneration at the ocean. We've got some people left situationships that wasn't for them anymore, started businesses, started back school, got their own place when they think they wouldn't have been able to do it because the credit wasn't looking so hot. But now they got it. I know the work that I do, and I know the work that I do with my ancestors. And I sit in a space of humility, and I sit in a space of still being open to learn, because there's so much more that I need to understand. But this sacred conversation with our ancestors is giving you the opportunity to connect or reconnect with something inside of you that you know that is there, but you're not sure what it is. Or you know that it's there and you've lost connection with it and you need to get it back. You need to fetch it. We're going to help you do that. We're going to create the space. It's a safe space for you. And we're going to make it happen. The only thing we haven't gotten as yet is men. And, you know, about a week, so now you're going to try and figure that out somewhere.
Yo, we'll figure that out.
We're going to figure that out.
Yes.
You know, we've had some amazing women pass through since I started last year. And I'm very excited. May next year is going to be, you know, our second year of doing this, but our third retreat. And I'm proud of myself. You know, I ain't waiting for nobody to clap for me. Listen, I put in some work. And if for both of you, clap for yourself and pat yourself on your back, because this work is not easy. And especially when we sit and we talk about mental health, that also came to me as something that Spirit said, you need to work on this. You need to bridge that gap, pull it all together, connect it. Because not everybody that sits and thinks that they have a mental health issue, that's what it is. Sometimes it's ancestors knocking on your door trying to get your attention. But it may show up that you got some mental instabilities. No, I'm not dismissing the fact that some folks have their challenges. Yes, that exists. But there's some people, you might just be an intuitive, deeper than others. You might be a medium. And I've had clients who've come to me for their children. One little girl as young as 5 years old. And she talking to them like she known them for years. And sometimes she put them in their place too. She look at them tell, not now. The mother calls me, I'm freaking out, Simone. Like, I'm like, what happened? She's talking to the lady, and then she's like, don't bother me. I'm busy. I'm playing. Yes. So the mother's like, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, well, nothing. She has control of the situation. What your 5-year-old has that a lot of people don't have is boundaries.
Right.
Even in the spirit world. So, yeah.
So could you speak to that point? Before I get that, I love an expression you used earlier when you said someone from behind.
Yeah.
As you talked about ancestors, I love that. It's just such a lovely way of thinking about ancestors. Someone from behind. I love that so much. I'll start borrowing that phrase. So getting back to like what you're talking about here, boundaries and dealing with ancestors. There's two things I would like you to speak to, and as well as Dr. Norissa Williams. Oftentimes, still as I work with clients, they might say to me, a lot of people feel like they're not sure like what messages that they receive from their ancestors. And I know, Simone, you've talked a lot about helping people to understand how ancestors are speaking to them, and you call it their love language. And secondly, the point that you just talked about, that 5-year-old, is having boundaries also with spirit, because some people seem to think like, when you're working with spirits, you can't have boundaries, that they could intrude all the time. Could you speak to that?
That is something that I had to learn early boundaries. And I was lucky enough that, listen, I'm sorry, but I'm so fascinated with these cows because now the calf is nursing. I'm going to hold on. These are all messages, so something is happening. I had to get a grip of that from early. When my gift showed itself, I was in my late 20s. And I had gone to see this woman, this Jamaican woman, a powerhouse of a woman, Dr. Vonnie Jean. She has a spiritual Baptist church in East New York. And I wanted to get this reading, and someone recommended her, and I went to her, and she looked at me, and she said to me, she says, you're just like me. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? Because she's short, I'm tall, she's light skin, I'm dark skin. I'm like, what are you talking about? She says, you're just like me, you can read. You can read. And she said, she stretched out her arms, and she said, look, I'm getting those pimples. And I looked at her, like, I gave her a look like when Norissa gave me when she was talking about her experience. Like, this girl, I was like, this one. So anyhow, I ended up attending her church. And I ended up in trouble, as a young 20-something-year-old, some madness I got myself into. And she was like, you need to come to church and you need to get yourself right with God. So I was like, well, let me attend this lady's church. So, Spiritual Baptist Church, is a lot of drumming and hand clapping and ringing the bell, and they're pulling adoption and they're doing their thing. And they're watching these women start to manifest and catch the Holy Ghost and the power and all these things. And I'm like, what is this? And nothing happened to me. Nothing. And then my life continued to go downhill. And then I went to her and I said, I think I need to baptize. Because with spiritual Baptists, they have that African energy, but there's still the Christian thing involved. And so she was like, okay. So I thought with baptism, no, you only go and dump your head like 3 times in the water. You come out, amen, and you go on home. Not with spiritual Baptists. You have to do something like sit on a mercy seat Sundays before you get to that water. And my first Sunday, I came in, I had on my earrings and a thing, and I showed up. And they took out my earrings, they took off my shoes. They told me close my eyes and move my hands and stomp my feet. I'm giving and I'm taking. You're going through this to, to make a connection with God, to see if this is something that you really want to do. This is your time to decide if you're going to take this next step, or you're going to be like, no, I'm out of here. So anyhow, I'm going through this thing, and all of a sudden, my body felt strange, and I saw my maternal grandmother. And she looked at me and she said, it's about time. And then weeks after that, I was only talking constantly to spirit. Constantly. I was seeing dead people, good, bad, sick, like everywhere I went. I would be at the cashier. All of a sudden I would look like, can you stop talking now? And she looked at me like, what? I was like, oh. And I was a hot mess. I used to be crying and bawling, like, you can't do this to me. I need a break. And they were just talking, like they were trying to play catch up. And I had to be calling people and giving them messages, And my spiritual mother said to me, girl, you got to put them down somewhere. You got to put them down. You got to talk to them and tell them not now. You got to put an altar up. I say to them, when I come to you at 6 o'clock in the morning, this is when we're going to talk. Not before, not after. You need to give me a break. Yes, I had to have one of those conversations. Because I'm at work and they're on me. You see your boss? You see she? This is what they're planning to do to you. And mind you, I was one step ahead of everybody. And one step ahead. You see, they said don't go down there. You see, they had me good, but it was becoming too much. And I had to have a conversation with them. So you can talk to your ancestors. You can talk to your spirit guides and tell them, listen, we need to set boundaries here because I have to live in this real world with you. And I can't function because if I go there and I start talking to you and nobody can see you, I run myself into trouble. Like you have those conversations, like I'm talking to you guys now. That's what you do. Set up those boundaries. And that 5-year-old knew that early, that this is what she had to do. I'm working with another client, with a teenager, and she's having a rough time. And I'm like, we got to get to her to teach those spirits boundaries. Talk to them. And one of the ways to give to them is to set up that ancestral altar, right? Because they want your attention all the time. If you set that ancestral altar up for them, especially with the 4 elements, water, light, smoke, and earth, then you put their pictures up, give them food that they like, give them drinks, coffee, tea, sit with them. I sit with my ancestors in the morning when I'm having a cup of tea, and I put a cup of tea for them too. And I sit and I talk. I talk about the things that bother me. I talk about the things that don't bother me. Yeah, and I hear them too. They're telling me, well, girl, this is what's going on with you. This is not what's going on with you. This is what you need to do. We figure it all out. It's just the same way you get on the phone and you talk to your girlfriends about things that you really don't need to talk about. Go sit down and talk to your ancestors to discuss why your marriage is having these issues, why you having these issues at work. Or just give thanks and just hang out and talk to them. But you give them that time and space. You be consistent and disciplined and intentional. Don't just show up when, things are going bad. But have that relationship with them. And they will start to communicate with you in ways in public that no one else could see. Because then I could feel them in my bones. I could feel them, the knowing. And I might hear something or I might see something. They're like, knock me and say, look over here. And so we have a different way of communicating now when the rest of the world don't know that they're talking to me. Don't mind it. Sometimes when I get quiet, people swear I'm in that space and they're like, what are you seeing now? What are you hearing? I'm not seeing or hearing anything. I'm thinking that I forgot to turn the stove off. So that is one of the ways you help to set boundaries with your ancestors. And then you create that love language that you mentioned earlier, where they know how, when to approach you. And you move from there.
That's lovely. And I hope others take heed to that, because too often when it comes to spirit, people often feel like they have no like they're just that they could be approached anytime, like there's nothing that they can do. But you're saying the opposite, which I think is so powerful. Dr. Norissa Williams and Simone, you could comment on this too. Um, so many people, as you know, Dr. Norissa, are struggling with anxiety, depression. What tools do you feel can help them the most, or what's your guidance, especially in these times? How do you feel we could stay more grounded and get the help also that we need?
Mhm. Good question. I think my answer is twofold, right? And the first thing that I think about is, what are your indigenous practices, right? So what did your people used to do to be able to be well, right? And so that might be herbs. That might be, my mother will boil cinnamon or boil some, like that. That's generation after generation. They're doing something with the herbs, right? It might be going outside. I mean, it got a little colder. I know you, Simone, love walking in the cold. Not most people, not me. But it might be going outside to walk in the sun, right? Letting the sun decalcify your pineal gland, right? Letting that vitamin D, the production of the vitamin D make you feel better. It might be putting your hands in the dirt, right? Because when you put your hands in the dirt and you smell it, it releases oxytocin and it helps us to ground. I also have, because it's important for me to ground, I have right under my desk, I have a tray with crystals. And so I put my feet in it to ground. But I also have a blanket. And then the blanket, it's a grounding blanket. It has silver in it. And I have it particularly because I work inside the house. I'm not outside very often, particularly when it gets cold. But that helps me to ground. So those are like your first lines of defenses: your diet, your sleep, your exercise, and what have you. Then your second line of defense, I would say, so therapy is great, and I think it's important. I think of therapy as like a spa for the mind, right? So the same way you would go to a spa for like your, a massage or different things like that. I think you never have a space in that is solely focused on you like you do in therapy. At the same time, I also think that if not approached appropriately, you could be externalizing your power to the therapist. And really, I think our well being has everything to do with us being aligned with our own power, experiencing our own power and not, giving it away. Those are very decolonial approaches, thinking that someone else is the expert on us. So I think it's important as like a structure and like a scaffold to kind of help you, but also while you're maintaining, you're situating yourself in yourself, right? So journaling is super important to me. I know that a lot of people do not like to journal, but journaling, when you write, you are moving into, I don't know, Simone, is not your favorite, but you move into a theta brainwave state, right? And so when you're in this, when you're writing fast, you're surpassing your conscious mind. You're able to access the unconscious. You're able to access creativity, healing, and you have different perspective on things. So that is of great benefit. Notice I have an emphasis on the prevention, and the treatment is important too. But there are so many things that we can do that we're not socialized to like kind of think about, to be preventive and to connect with ourselves and to connect with our people, because of this, the capitalist kind of society that we live in. But I do value community, because so that is also very important. Whether that community is, your spiritual faith, or your friends circles, or even professional affiliations, like a group of people that do the same thing. Your community is also another really important line of defense. Um, yeah, so those are a few things that I can think of. Um, but I think your spiritual practices are very grounding. Me personally, it's my altar's behind me. It's my altar in the morning. It's journaling. It's meditation. Connecting with my breath. And if I don't have those things, even if if there's nothing going on in my life, I feel just disconnected and kind of just like tethered here and there. And so, really, thinking preventively, I think will be able to help us be better resourced, so that when these things come, we have the internal capacity to deal with it.
I love that. So we have a question here from Jerome, and then I have some question also for you, Dr. Norissa. So he's asking, so what are the signs of a healthy relationship? And I was wondering, I'd love it for both of you all to just share your thoughts about this. His question: what are the signs of a healthy relationship?
A healthy relationship with whom? Your ancestors, or just? I just want to make sure
Sure. Let me see. I
that.
hope he hears that question and he could
Well,
clarify.
if it is a healthy relationship with your ancestors, you know for sure that you're seeing, some changes happening in your life. And not to say everything is going to be, all hunky dory, but when it isn't, you understand that um, that they will let you know, and you're not heading towards like major tragedy. I mean, less life still happens, but you recognize that before, everything would just fall apart, but now all of a sudden you've gotten a clue, it came up in a dream or in a message somehow to tell you, pay attention to this, right? So you now become more intuitive, you become more connected in recognizing when they're speaking to you. So that helps to create um, that that helps you to recognize when you are really starting to build a solid relationship with your ancestors. I know for me, listen, my journey has been a rough one, like from sickness to you name it. you know I plan to write a book and call it hashtag solo journey. It has been a rough ride, but I know when my ancestors are present, because they just show up and show me in little signs. Like this week has been rough. I got some really bad news, and then and I'm reaching out to my ancestors. I'm like, oh my God, this is happening. And they're like, listen, we don't have time for that, right? Because that is just not like, you know what to do in this situation, Simone. We you know what to do. And then in my emotional state, I got an email with some good news about another major situation I have been trying to push forward. And I took a minute and I was like, thank you. Thank you. Because in the midst of my emotional chaos stuff, they showed up like, well, while you in there, trying to get your act together, we still here working. And this is a report of where we are. So I literally had to like take stock of myself and be like, oh my God, thank you. So in terms of, you will know how they show up when you start to feel their presence, when your life starts to change, and when and how you respond to life in the good times and in the bad times. So in terms of the ancestor healthy relationship, that's there. And please leave room for stuff to happen. People are still going to die. People are still going to get sick. A few months ago, I had to deal with a very good friend of mine, and just as a trigger warning, he unalived himself. And, it wasn't a shock because he'd been having these issues and I've been trying with him. But you can try for so much, but folks still got to do the work, right? So, and this was a new thing for me, being now a spiritualist and having to deal with that. And it wasn't like it was a client where you compartmentalize that. It was a dear friend. So now I had to move through that energy, but also move through the energy of grieving him, but also seeing him on the other side and his struggles. So I don't know what other healthy relationships meant, but in terms of the ancestors, is that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you like to comment on that, Dr. Norissa?
Sure. In terms of, I'm seeing that Jerome, you said in general, in terms of relationships with the living, I think a healthy relationship is a fair give and take, right? And so you're not always giving without receiving. Reciprocity is important in relationships. Not to say you should be tit for tat, but we want to make sure that there is equal giving. we want to make sure that there is equity in the labor of the relationship, right? So in a partnership, there's going to be, there's going to be times when somebody's doing more than the other, whether that, I mean, it could, if we're talking about a romantic partnership, where like bringing in more money than the other person or doing more this or that. But in general, we want to make sure that there's equity in the relationship and in the roles. And I use the term equity because it could look like, oh, well, this person does this and this person does that, right? But this might require more emotional labor than this, right? This could be done in 10 minutes. This can be done in 4 hours, right? So making sure that there is like equity and parity in the relationship, like really thinking through in those ways. If you don't feel you don't want to feel depleted, and that's not to say that a relationship does not require work. It most certainly requires work, but that's different from being depleted. Like if at the end of the day, I can tell you, because this is my second marriage. My first marriage was very unhealthy, whereas this one is healthy. And in this healthy marriage, we work, right? But at the end of the day, we feel replenished in each other because the labor is shared, because the work is shared. Those are some things that quickly come to mind, but there's definitely open communication. You know what I mean? You don't want to have to go, because sometimes it, just because of the ways, and if we're talking about um, just the ways that people are socialized. Sometimes it ends up the way women are socialized, the way men are socialized, if we're talking about straight relationships, is, like just that the men might be socialized to hold the stuff in. And so the woman might be going back to this labor talk of, wait, what's wrong? And trying to anticipate the needs, and just making sure that there's open communication, so that no one has to compensate for the other, or for them not opening up. I hope I'm not getting too like abstract, but I'm just trying to say, like, open communication, expressing of the needs, so the needs can get met, and different things like that. And I think like that communication and that trust is also the foundation of a healthy relationship.
That's beautiful. Also, Dr. Norissa, so I heard you say earlier, when we were talking about working with a therapist, you were talking about being careful not to give our power away.
Mhm.
I was looking at your Facebook page earlier this week when I was learning more about you, and then at one point it looks like you had to post, I believe, about the 10 ways in which people give their powers away. You know, and as I work with clients, I like to come from a place of empowerment. I like people to feel like, okay, I could give you some spiritual guidance, but I like people to feel like, okay, but hey, you can make your own decision. So I'd like for you to share from your perspective, what are some of those ways in which you find that, we tend to give power away?
I love this question. Thank you. I love this. So the ways that we give our power away, first, it's going to start with you coming to know that you are powerful and what your power is, right? So that's the foundation of not giving your power away. But when you're in a relationship with people and you're, okay, yes, yes, whether you want to do it or not, yes, I'll do it, right? And you say yes when you really mean no, you're giving your power away. When you are playing roles in relationships that don't help you, so you're a martyr in the relationship, you're doing all the giving, the giving, the giving, and there's no receiving, you're giving your power away. When you have, this is, I remember, so in the first marriage, when after we had broken up, and then we were spending time together trying to see if we can be together again, my first husband had said, "Oh, you really changed. Like, look at all the movies that you're watching." And I was like, I didn't change. I stopped because you don't like romantic comedies. You wanted action. So, but I had so given my power away that he didn't even know who I really was. Right. So doing the things that don't even align with who you are for the sake of another. There is compromise that's necessary, but compromise, because you still have to be present within the relationship and seeking for your needs to get met. Um, Being silent, right? So that's another part of it. You're being silent for dynamics that hurt you, right? And you're swallowing it in the name of peace, when you have the right to be able to, express yourself and say what you want and what you need and what you think would be another viable way to go about a problem. What else? A lot of times too, the things that I think about a lot in more like macro level kind of spaces is that we have we have internalized these cognitive behavioral patterns, right? When we think of racism and sexism, even classism, all the isms, we have internalized these templates for how we should behave. We don't necessarily give thought to it because they're automatic cognitive scripts, right? So when I was saying before, when I was working as faculty and I was saying like there was an unfair distribution of the labor, I was part of the problem and giving my power away because it was clear to me that I was juggling 10 balls and other people were juggling two, but I was afraid to disrupt the dynamic and be like, oh no, because I didn't want to be seen as not a team player. I didn't want to be judged. Yearly we got like merit awards or whatever in our salary, and I didn't want not to get mine, right? So I fell in the line and I played this role, even when I wanted to be direct about what was happening and how unfair this dynamic was. So silence. There's quite a few ways, but those are the first that come to mind.
Love it, love it. And so we're almost at the hour mark. So I was wondering, for people, two questions, Dr. Norissa, and how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your services or your coaching, as well as the upcoming workshop that you all will be doing in New York? What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
There's the Simone and I see that the link has been put up a few times, but Simone and I both have the link for the December 9th event in our profiles on Instagram, and I am at Dr. Williams on Instagram. I also have a podcast at radical_remembering. It is a podcast about liberation and what it looks like in your daily life. I'm also definitely available via the direct message in the Instagram. I also have a new program called the Empowered Life Journey, where you take this amazing healing journey to get more aligned with yourself. So if you want to live a more empowered life, more soul aligned and awakened life, we take this beautiful journey together, and then you start this visioning process of what you want your life to look like, and then we plan it out together collectively in a group. I'm really big about bringing the collective together as opposed to this one-on-one kind of approach that I used to do, which is great, but not what I want to do anymore. So those are some ways. What about you, Simone?
Beautiful.
Yeah. So you can find me at my website, readingsbysimone.com. All the information is there about the work that I'm doing, the retreat. I also have a class called Spirituality and Your Ancestors. It's a 7-week course where we talk about the different ways in which you honor your ancestors and also spiritual hygiene. The retreat is May 2nd to 6th in the beautiful island of Barbados, where it's very hot right now, and it'll be hot then too. Information on the retreat is on there. So it's on there as well. I'm also on Instagram, Readings by Simone, Facebook, Readings by Simone, LinkedIn, Arthur, X, which used to be Twitter, Readings by Simone, Clubhouse Readings by Simone.
Beautiful.
I'm kind of stretched, but I'm really, really, really excited to be working with Norissa on this workshop, bridging the gap between mental health and spirituality. It's in New York City. I know some folks will be like, why isn't it online? We want to try and see you. I want to see you. Like, it's okay to see you. Like, one day I want to see Baba Weeks. It's hard to see you in these digital spaces, but it is a different energy when we can sit amongst each other and share that spirituality too. We've had to adjust because of COVID and get comfortable in these spaces. Thankfully, the great world and the universe and God and the ancestors and my Orishas are seeing it fit that I have the ability to read vibes. Because some spiritualists can't do that. They're not one of my spiritual mothers, she can read over the phone. I can read over the phone. Some people have their restrictions. So I wanted to, when I approached Dr. Williams, I like to give her the title, when I approached her to have this conversation, because, I want to kind of get back to us sitting together. That's who we are. That's how the information is passed on. That's the African way. You sit amongst the elders and you listen to them, and you hear what they have to say and the stories, and you pass the stories on, and it goes on. And I just felt the need that we needed to do that. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know where we're going to go next. But You know, it is what it is for now. I want to see your face. I want to talk to you in the morning, like how Diana Ross used to say. We're going to offer you breakfast. We're going to offer you lunch, so you don't have to leave space. We sit together and talk. We want people to network because we have some therapists licensed therapists who are going to be there. We also have students who are currently in college studying to do this work who are going to be present. So is also a way of building out another community. You know, we have some people flying in from different places too, some people driving in. You can make it happen. I want to see you there December 9th in New York City. That's my home. I don't like to say first or second home because in between Barbados and Brooklyn is a toss up for me. But I want to see you there December 9th in New York City, bridging the gap between mental health practice and spirituality. You can find me the link on my Instagram page. There you can purchase your tickets. Come in and sit with us.
I love it. I'd like to close with just some thoughts from both of you. We're almost at the end of 2023. What are your tips for people to maximize? Okay, let's get the most out of 2024. Dr. Norissa, what would you say? How can people get the most out of 2024? And Simone, I'd love your thoughts on that as well.
My quick answer is that relationship with your ancestors, right? If you don't have a developed relationship with your ancestors, if you are not increasing your capacity to hear spiritual communication, I think that that's an important one. I mean, this year has been where I attune to spirit before I make any decisions, and it has made this year that much richer. You know what I mean? So I think that if I had to boil it down into something, work on your relationships with your ancestors, with spirit in general, and make it a team effort, like Simone was giving us examples of.
Yeah.
One thing I'm hearing for 2024, one of the key words I'm hearing is rest. We need to rest. We need to set aside time to be still. And stillness doesn't necessarily mean journaling, doesn't necessarily mean, still meaning like stop. Take some time for yourself. Spend more time in nature. If you're near a body of water, I like to use Sundays for my day to go to the beach. I watch some of you who follow me will know I will post videos of the guys taking the horses every Sunday morning to take a bath, or seeing the tadpoles get, hatch in the sand and find their way to the water. Like find a tree, take a walk in the snow if it's not a nor'easter. Like really get some rest and be still and spend time with self. That is what I'm hearing for 2024. I need to sit with it some more. They've been, dropping little whispers as folks are getting ready to, book. They said they end the year sessions or the beginning of the year sessions with me. And I talk to spirit and I'm like, well, what's the overall theme for 2024? And what comes up a lot is rest and time for self. We are in so many different roles as mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, counselors, in all these spaces. But it is a need to get back to self and to rest. And I'm interested to see when we have the reading of the year from the different spiritual houses across the world, what if it is in alignment. And that would make me feel good because I'm like, okay, you're on track here. You're not, hearing outside of yourself, but rest is important. Rest, take time to settle. And even if that time is, as Norissa is saying, sitting at that altar, do that, but take some time to rest. I, even refocusing, I'm in the middle of having conversations with my own ancestors, and I'm putting some things that I don't want to do for 2024. And yes, you can do that. When they come to you with things, you'll be like, can you give me a minute? I may not be there yet. They're gonna, as in, people say, spin the block and come back, but you can ask for more time. Like, don't think that this is, a pressure thing. No, you talk to them, and I've said to them, listen, there's certain things for Simone now outside of readings by Simone that I need to take care of and that I need you to focus on me with. I put in a lot of work, I've been obedient and I will continue to do that. But, there's a few items here that for me personally, Simone, that is nobody else's business, that I want to focus on. And you can ask for that too. So yeah, the main thing I'm hearing is rest, and I'm fully looking forward to taking advantage of that, because it has been, since I started readings by Simone in 2019, it has been, a push, and I'm getting older, man. I'm not spring chicken anymore.
I love what you say about rest, because it's so important, but I've noticed, and I even had to like check myself this year too. It's like sometimes there's a guilt with resting, and people feel like, well, why should they be resting? Why should they be taking a nap? There's an internal guilt about not doing any, taking that moment, like you said, for you, and why not you? Why do you not deserve rest? Why do we not deserve happiness? Why do we not deserve joy? Well, we do deserve joy. We do deserve happiness. We do deserve rest. We do deserve abundance. As for my thoughts about how people can maximize 2024, it would be, one of them would be trusting oneself, trusting one's intuition, trusting one's inner guidance. It can't be that everyone else is so great, but we are not, that. So expanding our belief system to recognize our own genius, our value, because so many of us, we tend to undervalue ourselves, but we need to be bold and say, no, this is who I am and this is what I have to offer. And then second would be just being dedicated to whatever it is that we feel that our calling is, and be open to how that calling might evolve. So many people, get discouraged so easily. Things don't go their way, and they feel like that's some sign from God to stop. No, it is not no sign from God to stop. It's just that, you have to work through your challenges. One of the things I could tell you from my own journey is that, delays and challenges and obstacles, they tend to make things better, actually. And so when certain things that didn't go my way this year, when I look back, I realized that, oh my goodness, it got better. That was the best thing that could have happened. So being open to that. Someone just popped in with a question, and I still want to answer it, even though I feel like both of you all touched on that question before. And even though we're at the hour mark, I want to touch on this question that Cheryl Castor is asking, and both of you all could comment on this, even though I feel like we touched on this before, but since maybe she missed that part. She's asking, well, how do you develop a relationship with your ancestors? I am thankful to have a relationship with my ancestors, but how do I deepen it? I'd love, in just a few minutes, you all, your comments.
Well, I would suggest, that if she hasn't already, to set up an altar, an ancestral altar, and include your ancestors that, you feel connected to, the ones that you knew, even the ones that you don't know, sit with their energy. If you're looking at their picture or whatever, and just see if there's a connection there, because not all ancestors you want to venerate. Some folks in their living were not nice people, and you may not want to have that relationship with them. But, create an ancestral altar. And if you are in a space where that can't happen, designate a tree maybe outside, or a space where you feel safe, and just, and again, be still, sit with them and create and have that create that connection. Norissa?
I would say, well, spend time like any relationship. So in addition to like going to like if you go to your altar and speaking to the ancestors as a collective, spending time like individually, right? So that you can come to know the frequency of them, so that when they come to you at any time, you know who it is. So I say that like, for example, I have a cousin who actually he died just tomorrow is a year ago that he died, and so I've spent time talking, and so now because of that, I can recognize him in spirit when he comes. He comes with the smell of a specific cologne. He comes with a certain kind of jokes. My goddaughter, who died last year, I can. She has this like flittery kind of energy, but it's because I've sat with it and attuned to her energy that I can pick it up when I'm in different spaces to know, when they're trying to speak to me. And then also asking relationship kinds of questions, like Simone was saying, like not just like, hey, this is what I need. Can you give me some sort of guidance? And then walking away and not waiting for the answer, but really like engaging in some back and forth kind of communication to be able to know so that you're able to better discern when it's them. Like I had my great grandmother who showed up to Simone and shows up to other readers too. I asked her too. I was like, "Well, how come you don't show up to me like you do when you show up to other readers?" I only met her one time in my life, and she said, and I said, because I could hear my great grandfather. We call him Baba, which was just because they couldn't say father, so we call him Baba. So I was like, I know Baba. And she said, you like basically you haven't spent time with me. You have to sit with me. You have to get to know my frequency, train your senses to be able to recognize my frequency and what have you. So it's really, to me, it's about spending that time like you would with the living, because this is a beautiful relationship. And there's no relationship that will develop without time.
Yes.
Wow. Well, thank you both for being here. I will be sharing, again, the link to the workshop as well as the retreat. But thank you all for sharing your wisdom and your love with us. Jerome said that this has been nourishing, and that was our prayer to
Thank you,
to
Jerome.
nourish people. So
Yeah.
we thank you all for being here, and for all of the fans out there across the Kings River. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. So again, wishing you all lovely rest of the year, a powerful 2024, and again, thank you for spending this time with us today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.